without delay, I am going to turn it over to Kim. For those of you who do not know Kim, she's presented for us at several conferences, joined us kind of here over Zoom a few times since we've been more virtual this last year, and has just an amazing wealth of information about social media. Also special effects makeup. If you've not seen her work, it's fascinating. I could watch it all day. It's fun. That's probably the best way to describe it, is it's just fun and fascinating. So Kim, I'm gonna let you kind of share a little bit more about yourself, and then talk about it and answer questions.
Sure. Sounds good. So my name's Kim Witte. I'm a special effects makeup artist, but how I'd introduce myself if this was a business email is I am a media company that specializes in creating exciting and entertaining and educational content around special effects makeup, now cooking, culinary arts, and general artistry. I've been doing special effects makeup since 2012, established my business in 2016, and all my social medias. So I started them back in 2016, just with my Facebook and YouTube tag team. Since then, I've expanded into Instagram, Zin, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, Facebook. What else do I have? There's so many of them. I've done firework. I've jumped on Amino and like so many different platforms.
So if you were, and feel free, if you've got questions, this is kind of Q&A format here. So we're here to answer questions that you have about social media. So if you have them, feel free to kind of give us a wave, unmute, just start talking, put it into the chat. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And basically, let's talk about the difference between social media personally and social media professionally. Is there a difference? How do you treat them differently? So just in general, although you might want to touch on, some of them may be different. So I'm going to just throw that one out there, but please ask the questions you want to know the answers to.
Yeah, so that's a really good question and a good debate that basically everybody has when they're starting a business online. Basically it all comes down to self-awareness and what you're trying to accomplish. So if you're going to be an influencer or a media company, it's very valuable to allow your audience to have the opportunity to connect with you as a human, because we're humans. The whole point of social media is to be able to connect with someone on a personal level all the time. If you're separating your personal self from your company, there's a lot less to connect to. Like there's no face to connect to. You don't know what their favorite coffee is or what their hobbies are. So there is a huge benefit of sharing your personal life mixed in with your business and making yourself accessible through like live streams, replying to comments, just including exciting snippets about yourself in captions, or maybe 20% of your content is your personal life that's appropriate or that you want to share online, and then the 80% of it is the business. Obviously, depending on how your personal life is and what profession you're doing, you have to use some discretion. Like if you're working with children, it wouldn't be smart to like post you in a bikini, not like drinking on a beach or something. So like you have to use a little bit of discretion in that department. But I think it's kind of silly to separate personal life from business life completely just because you lose the whole connection that people have. Like someone's way more likely to buy your painting if they like your painting, and they also know that like you have the same movie, that's like your favorite movies are the same, that you've replied to them 20 times, stuff like that. It builds a way stronger connection, which obviously increases sales over time.
I have a question.
Sure, what's up?
So I have a art Instagram that I post at from time to time, but I find myself slipping with being consistent on posting. How would you say would be a good strategy to maintain that consistency?
Yeah, so first of all, you got to make sure you're posting things that you actually like and that you're working in a subject that you're actually really passionate about. Because I have found that unless if you're really self-conscious, because if you're self-conscious, it's hard to post. But if you're comfortable with your art, you're excited to share it. So you don't usually drop behind too far. But if it's more of an organizational issue, there's a couple of different software pieces that you can use to schedule things ahead of time. I use Hootsuite, like hoot like an owl and suite like a hotel. and you can actually schedule posts. I think for free, you can post 20 or 30 or like 30 pieces of content over a calendar. You'll get a little calendar. You can pick which day, you can pick which time it'll actually release, and you can coordinate it with Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can only do one picture or one video. You can't do the slideshow thing through Hootsuite just because the programming doesn't work with Instagram that well. But that's what I do. So I write out in a Word document. I'll have the date. I'll write what type of post it is, like this is a shout out, or this is a behind the scenes of my whatever makeup, or this is this makeup. And I'll write the caption out with like some hashtags. I'll copy that, paste it into Hootsuite, and then plug in the visual content and then just schedule it and forget it. And then it just comes out. And I don't have to think about it. So if I have 1 hour on Monday to get like the whole week done, then when my week gets busy or I'm sad or tired or something, it just comes out and you don't have to worry about it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, so I got a question. So I know that in social media, we, with the work that we come from, we mix with a lot of people from our business lives, with school, and just a little bit of web mixtures of everything. So like, would you recommend, like, I know we have an audience of like pretty much of everywhere, for a mixture of all kinds of cultures and all kinds of background. So would you like recommend maybe like diversifying it by having like maybe having two profiles, maybe like two different accounts? Like, how would you go about with that? Or would you just like really restrict yourself from like having just like really say like, oh, I'm not going to post this because it's going to really be offensive or whatnot?
It's a pretty complicated question. I would say it's important to have self-awareness and be true to who you are as a person, because if you're not a jerk and you're not a bad person, you're not going to come off as a jerk or as offensive or as, because people just get offended. It's going to happen. People get offended by my work all the time, but I find the audience that finds me appropriate, that enjoys me. So like if you're bilingual or you are immersed in like 3 different cultures, I say lean hard into that and make it part of your branding, because it makes you unique. It makes you special. It's part of your identity.
I'm going to go ahead and ask one that we often get, and that's if there is so many platforms out there. You and I've talked about this. Is the amount of time to be on every platform very, in a good way, in a productive way. It takes a lot of time and is almost, I don't know if anybody could actually be on every platform by themselves unless you got a whole bunch of people working for yourself to manage all of that. So if you're just kind of like a student doing your own business, or just a solopreneur in that sense, and you're trying to manage your social media, how do you determine, I'm not going to ask you which one's best because I think we know the answer to that one. So how do you determine where to spend your time? Like which platform to use and where to spend your time, and then to do it effectively, how much time should I anticipate investing into it?
Yeah, so that is a really good question. So the first thing you got to do is be introspective and figure out what type of content you gravitate towards the most, that you enjoy. For example, if you are really self-conscious and you don't like the way you look and you feel really uncomfortable on camera, video is probably not the way for you to go. But if you really like imagery, then there's always Instagram. If you're really good at writing, but you're not so good at imagery and video, LinkedIn is really good for you. If you have like a really soothing voice and you love talking, podcasts are the way to go. Or if you have an iPhone, there's a new platform called Clubhouse that is an audio-based platform that's kicking off major steam. So if you haven't heard of that, look it up if you have an iPhone, because you could gain traction there right now. But once you figure out which one of those things you're the most comfortable producing, then you can figure out which platform. Like for example, if you are engaging and exciting and have technology access, YouTube is a great place to start. If you are more of picture-based, Facebook and Instagram. If you are into like high energy connecting with video, TikTok is a good route to go. Zin is also a TikTok competitor that you can gain more traction on. That one's a little more broad. Yeah, so once you figure out which type of content you want to produce, I suggest you start with 2 platforms at a time. Instagram and Facebook can actually be paired. So you only have to do one of them and then it just works with the other one. Once you've done that though, and you've made your selection, I suggest that you stick with one and go hard on it and figure it out as you go. Like I started with a Facebook page that isn't Witty Artistry branding before I even started my company. And that was the only social media I had. And I learned a bunch just from learning to post on there. And then I started a YouTube and Instagram and I went hard on those. And that's all I had until probably late 2019, where I started branching off into other things because I finally felt that I had my life in order and my process in order enough that I could actually justify getting another social media. Because it was really foreign to me. I never had a social media. I didn't have a smartphone. I had no business experience with it. So you have to just be self-aware in what you can actually handle. And everybody has a different process and a level of energy and time that they're willing to put into something. So you just have to like accept that and figure out what works for you. Because like there's some people who are like really into this one social media and it's their life and it brings them like a bunch of joy and they do it for like 6 hours a day and they're happy. And then there's other people that would stress them out. So you just got to be self-aware and just think about it a bit.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a couple questions.
Sure.
Recommending on the timing of the posts, time of day, and I guess that may depend on platform, and how many posts per week. Along with that, how do you manage your posting schedule? I mean, if you're on like half dozen to a dozen different platforms, do you use an Excel spreadsheet? How do you manage your posting schedule besides Hootsuite, which you mentioned was only good for 3 platforms? And then, see, it's a 3-part question with subparts. Percentages of posts that are shout out, behind the scenes, and work. Do you have a ratio that you use, or is it just kind of as it happens? And thank you in advance.
Yeah, of course. Let's go with the first one, which was
Timing of the post.
Timing. Okay, yeah, timing of the day
per week.
Okay, so this is completely dependent on what audience you're aiming for and what time zone you live in. So like if you're an English speaker that lives in, CST time, then you're probably going to, like in my industry, lots of the people who are interested in SFX makeup live on the East Coast and the West Coast. So I try to time my posts during their lunch break, when they're home from work, and on weekends especially. So like my heavy hitter new content always comes out on Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I've been doing that since 2015, so people have come to expect it, but it also hits everybody in my time zone that speaks English after dinner, after they get home. It's late in the evening when people are scrolling on social media on the East Coast. And I've also found that either people are on lunch or they're just getting off work on the West Coast. So that works out pretty well. I only really time YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook just because they're more structured. I also set an alarm. I have a reoccurring alarm that goes off on my phone every single day at 5:48 p.m. that tells me to post on whatever. So whatever isn't scheduled, which is usually TikTok because you can't schedule it. I will go in and I will post a TikTok at that time. So I at least share 1 video a day. But since this is what I do for a living, I have a lot more time during the day to dedicate to thoughts about sharing posts. So I might share 1 in the morning and then 1 in the evening, and then see how it performs in time zones, because I have an audience, all English speakers, but I also have a huge Middle Eastern audience that's really into what I do. And I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't sharing some late night things. And then as for Snapchat or anything that's instant where you're constantly sharing stories, do that every single time you see something that you think is cool. So like if you put your coffee down on the table and the steam's coming off of it really cool and the sun's hitting it, take a picture of it, put it on your Instagram story or Snapchat and say like, what tea or like, what do you like to drink in the morning? And you'll keep gaining traction along that. So that was the timing question. And I forgot what the second question was.
Actually, a sub question to your timing, you mentioned reviewing performance. How are you, what kind of metrics do you use to track the performance on different platforms?
Yeah, so as the creator, you have access to analytics on your page and also analytics on each and every image or video. Most platforms have that ability just because it's becoming the norm and people are updating it. I care the most about engagement, not necessarily likes, but the comments. If I'm getting lots of comments, I know that the content I'm making is extra interesting because anyone can hit like. Like is still valuable, but what's really valuable is when someone bothers to write a paragraph about their cat or about how this post made them feel. So anytime I'm doing something that has either a lot of comments or the comments themselves are longer and more engaging instead of just like spams of emojis, that's when I know that either my imagery, video, or caption is doing better. You can also look at the reach or the impressions, because if your post, if people are staring at it a long time or they're interacting it with a long time, the algorithm will be like, hey, people like this, so I'm going to show it to more people. So you'll notice on posts that people think are really interesting, your impressions might be like through the roof. Even if you don't have a ton of likes or a ton of comments, you'll know that your post is being engaged with because the algorithm actually knows how long you linger on something while you're scrolling, which is how Facebook ads work. You can get the same ad over and over again, even if you never click on it, because it recognizes you stalled like an extra second on it. So that's a good metric to look at.
Okay, and then another question, I hate to be a monopoly here. Do you spend money to promote any of your posts? And because you've been on social media now for a number of years, anybody coming into this fairly new, graduating and whatnot, and just getting started, these platforms are pretty saturated. Would you recommend that they do any promotions, or is there anything special that they could do to get traction?
Yeah, if you have money and you have money to spend, Instagram and Facebook is worth creating targeted ads, not just aimlessly promoting ads to try to get more likes or whatever. But with those platforms, they're so evolved that you can actually, like, if you're a coffee shop in Milwaukee that makes like this one specific type of roast on this one specific road, you can target your 35 to 65, whoever's like your main clientele, in 20 miles of a radius, and they're interested in coffee. Like, it's so finite, like you can target so many things. So if you have money to spend and you're a small business and you're like selling merchandise or something, that's a really good route to go. But if you're advertising just to try to grow your account, it's not the greatest move, because Facebook, and at least on Facebook and Instagram, their stuff is linked, and Facebook recognizes that once you spend money, that you're willing to spend money again to get the same hits. So they keep reducing your engagement over time. So if you promote too often, you'll end up in a terrible rabbit hole of needing to promote to get any organic reach. It's kind of evil, but like, they understand human psychology. So unless if you're trying to accomplish something very specific for a campaign, I would not recommend promoting them.
Yeah, that's information is actually very scary, that they can do the radius and coffee drinker and, you know, people between 5'10" and 6 feet, and you know, that's really creepy. But also my last question was percentages of posts versus shout out, behind the scenes, and current work.
Yeah. So I'd say I try to do like 60%-ish is my work that's new. And then 10% to 15% is shout outs. That's just totally unrelated to me. 5% is self promotion. So like if I have a Patreon or a sale or an Etsy. And then the rest is my process. So behind the scenes, here's me with a coffee cup or like whatever, because people are there to watch me make art, but you'd also be surprised how many people are there to watch you specifically make the art and what you're interested in, because there's so many people that could be your best friends if they lived in your area and you actually met them in person, and those are the people that become your super fans on social media.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Glad I could help.
Yeah, we've got a question in the chat here. What tips do you have to gain a bigger audience on social media platforms? I know you've touched a little bit on this, but I know there's more conversation on that as well. So what are your top tips for gaining an audience?
Yeah, so the most important first thing is finding something you're passionate about, not leaning into what you think you should be doing, but leaning into what you actually love doing. So like if you're obsessed with Mario and Mario is all you ever talk about in your free time and you collect Mario collectibles and play all the video games, but you're going to school to be a lawyer, um, you might want to lean heavily into your passions. And if they're both your passion, lean into both. Because I can tell you, I don't care how professional or how what your profession is. If you are interested in something that the audience can connect with, you're more likely to get sales. You're more likely to have new clients. You're more likely to have word of mouth because you're actually a human that they can connect with and share about. And I lost my train of thought. What was the question again? So sorry.
That's okay. Just how to gain audience, how to build that audience up.
Okay. So once you've discovered what your thing is that you're obsessed with and you want to talk about, the first thing is to document, don't create. This takes away the hesitation and the self-judgment of like, it's not good enough, the quality or like whatever. The quality is subjective. You might think that this is the coolest painting you've ever made, but if the audience doesn't care, it doesn't matter. Or if you think the painting is terrible, the audience might really like it. So instead of over judging yourself and trying to post your finished stuff only or the things that you think are super awesome, instead just document the process. So that might be a picture of your studio and the mess you made with like a caption describing what project you're working on. And then the next one might be like halfway through the painting, and then sharing your work from the past or whatever. So documenting, not creating, will allow you to increase your content substantially. And then also make sure that your content is platform specific. It doesn't have to be completely new, completely fresh content on every single platform, but you have to respect the platform. And what I mean by that is spend like 8 hours on a platform once and kind of just like write down some adjectives of like styles and personalities, I guess, that you would see on the platform and see sort of like what the flavor of the room is. Because like you behave differently when you go different places, even if you're not doing it on purpose. Like if you walk into a business conference, you will behave differently than if you walked into a garage with your friends. It's the same with social media platforms. You're still you're still you sharing the things that you believe in or whatever, but you have to share in context in the platform. So like on Instagram and Facebook, it's more professional and polished and in a specific style, versus where on Snapchat, you could take a picture of literally anything and or just, you in that half dark, just saying some thoughts, and that will be perceived as just as good. And then TikTok is very much like show me your raw self, And we accept, you filmed it on a potato in the dark. And we also accept you're working with Universal Studios and made your movie into the 9:16. So respect the platform, but don't overjudge yourself about it. And post consistently. That's important. You don't have to post at the same time every day, but you have to try to at least post once a day. But if that stresses you out, just start with what's manageable to you. So like if you could do 2 a week and you can constantly maintain 2 a week, then just do 2 a week until one day you feel comfortable adding them like another day. And the other huge important thing is make sure you reply to all your comments, all of them until it's impossible. It's really important because I have seen so many pages die that do like really good art or they're really talented or whatever, and they get comment after comment after comment after comment, and they don't reply to them. They just like them or they don't even engage with them at all. And then over time, they lose. Their followers drop off, people stop caring, because it's like if you sent a message to a friend 20 times and they ignored you every time, like you're going to stop reaching out to that friend. Hope that helps.
Those are great tips. Any other questions before? I've got others, so feel free to ask.
You look like you're in a kaleidoscope.
Oh, I can't. I keep trying to adjust, and I'm just in a weird space. So I'm gonna ask about, and you talked about this a little bit about the consistency, and the patience. How important, is patience. I know I see, somebody will be like, oh, I had this video, and it really, or this post or whatever, and I got, X number of likes or this or that. But I think the reality is, you're really looking at more of a long-term thing. So what is, how important is patience? What do we, oh, the dream sequence filter. Yeah. How important is patience to letting your audience build?
If I could give every person 2 gifts in the world, it would be self-awareness and patience. Those 2 things and hard work. Those 3 things can get you anywhere in the world. Patience is insanely important. I get hundreds and thousands of messages of people asking for social media tips or whatever. And like, I'll reply to however many I can, but so many people will hit me up like a week later, like I'm posting every day and it's not doing anything. And I'm like, I've been doing this for 6 years straight. And like, it's starting to pay off now and last year or like the year before that. And I've been sharing, I'm like, how many times are you posting? How long have you been posting? Is your content something you're actually excited about? Is your profile public? Like, it's so important. And you never understand just how intricate the web of the world is, with opportunities. Like things will come knocking on my door that I didn't even know existed. And it all comes back to like work I've done in the past. Like I've gotten insane gigs because I just, posted consistently, and then someone in the future saw it and went, we would like to hire her to do something like that, even though I did that makeup 4 years ago and used Mortal Kombat as a hashtag. Then all of a sudden Warner Brothers is knocking on my door like, hey, we'd like you to promote Mortal Kombat. Like, do you want to be a Mortal Kombat ambassador? I'm like, excuse me, what? Like, and that's like 4 years later. And if you had just given up and stopped posting, you wouldn't get opportunities like that. Like it's really important.
Look, any questions before I jump in with mine? So let's talk about that. Oh, go ahead. Was there one?
Sorry, Amy. Sorry, my video is out. We got workers on the street outside, so I'm like constantly keeping an eye on them. I don't have, it's not a specific question. It's more just kind of a thoughts popping into my head based on what you're talking about, and what challenges not challenges, but what I'm experiencing working with social media. Mainly, I'm mainly focusing on Instagram right now since I'm a photographer, and my clients are, a lot of them are interior designers and they love Instagram. It's where they promote themselves. And it's this challenge of, you're talking about, you post what you love, you have that passion for it, and it's true. But then again, it gets boring. Like when you start, like the challenge I'm facing is like finding the excitement in something I can post about that I haven't posted about like a zillion times already, without like interrupting myself in my work. You know what I mean? It's like I'm trying to get a practice of like documenting my work as I do it. Like, oh, here I am. Let me grab a selfie of me doing whatever, to have something else to do. But it's tricky to kind of keep that. It's like create a consistent image that tells a story that also, I also keeps your own interest up on the platform itself. So it's not really a question. It's just sort of a.
I understand your plight. It sounds like you're judging yourself too harshly, to be honest. Because something that you think is boring, someone else might be like super excited about it. So if you're putting out, I mean, if you are making content that you don't like, then you should definitely change it up, because otherwise you're always going to be bored. You're always going to be disinterested. But if you're stopping yourself from posting because you think that someone isn't interested in your CAD software or your model making or your sketches or whatever you do, just stop judging yourself and posting it anyway. Also, doing something from a unique perspective, I find works really well. Like your studio looks very interesting. If you took pictures at an aerial view or at a macro zoomed in, maybe on like your super exciting coffee mug, but it's blurred out in the background and you're sitting at your work desk or something, like all of a sudden the perspective of the image changes and it gives the viewer a unique perspective that would make your mundane, as you described it, content a little more like exciting. So everybody always sees me, here or here or here in an SFX makeup, but I recently started switching it up to, well, what if I was in the kitchen? Or what if my 6 foot tall friend held the phone over the top and you can see the top of my head looking down at my table? Like, just switch up the perspective, I guess, and maybe the captions. I've started getting like more introspective or more personal in my captions. Instead of just talking about the process or what's going on in the image, I might share a deep personal thought that comes to my head when I look at that image, like about the impermanence of life, or about the quiet moments spent looking at yourself in the mirror when you're really tired after working. Like, does that make sense? I hope that's helpful. I don't know.
Makes sense. It makes sense. No, it's a trick. I think one of the challenge I know I face is, I'm an art photographer, but posting things on a visual social media, it's a challenge sometimes. I did a behind the scenes shot and people were like, oh, I love your new piece. And I was like, it's not okay. Well, that's fine. I'm glad you liked it. But there was a misrepresentation. I had to clarify, that's not what I do. It was an interesting, and maybe that doesn't matter, that they misunderstood it, except for the thing that I did for behind the scenes was badly lit, crappily, quickly done, trying to document something versus like the more finished part. So it's that challenge of like, and maybe that's what you're saying, don't judge it, or jump more into the narrative as opposed to the final pieces, the final material, the final work.
Yeah. So with that, it does sound like you're overjudging yourself, because you're worried that someone thinks your quality of your work is lessened by that post because they thought it was a final piece or whatever. But something I'd like you to think about is, instead of width of audience, think depth of audience. You would rather have a room full of 20 people who would jump in front of a bus to save your life than standing in a room of 1 million people that are, just kind of interested in talking with you. So if you share the behind the scenes and your whole process and all that stuff, and it gets less likes, less engagement, but the engagement you're getting is deeper, more interested, they're sharing something about them, that's always more valuable than just getting the width. The depth is more important.
All right, other questions?
I think one popped up in the chat. Let me look, what did I post and understand the others? Oh yeah, paradigm shift. Yeah, it's important looking at the post and seeing from another perspective. Yeah, it's good. It's a good idea. I think the whole like using macro photography or unusual perspectives that you don't normally see as a human. Like, I don't know, maybe you have a cat. A really cool series would be like my life or what I'm doing from my cat's perspective. So you can start, you get like a little tripod and you put your phone on a stand and you put it in all the places that your cat watches you, or the height of your cat, and it's you doing your process. Like that would be something that's a unique version of your paintings or something that people who love cats and have pets themselves would be really interested in connecting with. And then you have a talking point to share.
Some great comments there. And so one of the things I think, has kind of been touched on a little bit is the monetization. And I think sometimes, that can be the elephant in the room that, is there and people want to talk about it, but they're, it's something that can happen overnight, I guess, but I think just like the overnight sensation and everything else, the reality is it isn't. So talk a little bit about monetization, if that's something somebody's wanting to do. And, we talked about a little something before everybody else came on the call. And I monetization is something I think you and I both would agree is more than just the monetization that YouTube sending you or Google sending you. It's a much broader picture of how all of this works to creating income for you. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with monetization and branding, it's a pretty broad subject, but the most important thing I think is I actually saw a Gary Vee video recently. If you don't know him, he's awesome. He's this amazing entrepreneur who's just, anyway, but he said something along the lines of be the TV show, not a TV commercial. The whole advertising has shifted with the invention of the smartphone, with social media, that ads just aren't a thing that work very well anymore. Instead, if you're the TV show, eventually people will want to buy something that you signed, something that has imagery of your work. They will want to pay you to talk. They might want you to sit in a conference and say what you have to say. So if you focus on being the show and not the commercial, you will always get work. You will always get income as long as you are, working hard, putting out the content, and you're talented in what you're doing, which everyone will be when they find the thing that they love. As for how you get monetized, just to like go into more specific, with social media, the range of how I get income is insane. When I started off in the beginning, I thought it was just AdSense and affiliate marketing, and maybe someone will buy my t-shirt or whatever, and then Patreon, where people can sign up for your platform and throw you a bone. And that was the extent of my understanding. But then as I have continued to make stuff, then all of a sudden there's people that want to hire you to speak about your process, or to speak about social media, or about your artwork. But then there's also people that want to hire you to teach about those things. Or there's people who literally just want to send you money because they like you, and you can have like a Venmo open and have your Venmo or your PayPal just accessible, and people can make donations because they're not interested in joining a repetitive donating supporting platform like Patreon, but they want to help you when they can. That's a thing. Along with this is a huge one, which is making content for companies. That was a thing that I never even fathomed I would be doing, but I'm doing it now, and it's amazing. It's like my favorite thing. So creating commercials, except they're not commercials, it's still a TV show, involving a product or a service that a company does, but it completely just works with what you're doing. Like I work with makeup companies, with skincare companies, makeup removal companies, and brush companies, because it just works fluid with what I'm doing. And it doesn't seem like an ad, even though it's technically sponsored. Things like that. One thing that's really important though, when you are starting to get into the advertising or getting money from your workspace, is you need to not sell out. What I mean by that is don't avoid taking money. That's good. But what I'm saying is if you get contacted for something that goes against your moral standards or against your platform, you have to say no. Because every single time you take something that's contradictory to what you're doing and you don't like it, you are hurting your branding. And branding is the most important, powerful thing in the entire universe now, outside of communication, is how you are represented and how you are seen in the world. And the best way to do that authentically is to be our authentic self. And like I've gotten so many deals of like, you could advertise this watch and we'll pay you really well. And I'm like, but why though? I never show my wrists and I don't use, like I have this, it's fine. Or more unethically, I've gotten a bunch of energy drink or cannabis related products. And I'm like, that's cool if other people do that, but I don't want to market energy drinks to children. Like that makes me uncomfortable. And I've turned down thousands and thousands of dollars in like individual projects just doing that. So like you have to stay true to what you're doing, what you're comfortable with, and what fits in your branding. That's totally unique to your situation. You might swear like a sailor in your content and make gory stuff, and like it might fit with your branding, but it just didn't work with mine. So that's something to keep in mind. Then also now there's things that you could have like an online store. That's actually something I've just recently explored as I've opened up an Etsy. And without all of the branding and the social media construction I've done, this store wouldn't have worked. I'll tell you what, because nobody would know it exists. But now like I make one post about my paintings and then all of a sudden 15 people are interested. And so branding leads to infinite marketing and sales opportunities. You just have to be patient and keep doing what you're good at and what you like, and just keep putting yourself out there, and the opportunities will just bombard you eventually. There are a couple of opportunities though that might be something you're really into that you have to fight for. Meaning like maybe there's a specific company or a specific job that you really want to do, but they never hit you up or they haven't hit you up yet. Then you need to think outside the box on how to get their attention. Maybe you do 10 pieces of content that is directly going towards that company. Like, I don't know, maybe you're a shoe designer. So like you really want to work for this one specific sandal brand that exists in California or something. So you might do 10 days of shoes, or maybe 50 days of like shoe designs, and you're tagging them and you make the caption relevant to what you're doing, and you're just showing the content on top of following them and liking their posts and commenting on everything, or sending them a really engaging gift. Like specifically what I'm referring to in my world is I have always wanted to work with the company Mayron. It's a body paint company that I adore. They're just really nice people. Everything's ethically sourced and made in the United States, and I love their body paint. And I've been using it for like 6 years and tagging them constantly and entering their contests. And eventually they followed me, and that was like a huge deal. But I'm like, I want to work with these people. I see my friends working with them, or like I follow everything and I enter their contests. And I just really want to do it. So I had to go over the top. I had to think outside the box. I had to bring value to them. And recently it actually worked. So like I'm going to be working with Mayron sometime soon. So like some opportunities you have to like go for, but most of them come to you if you just brand consistently over time. That was a lot. Hope that helps.
No, that's excellent. And I'm gonna just say, because you were sharing the Etsy and showing me kind of what you were putting on Etsy, and I just want to stress 6 years, right? 6 years. And
Yeah.
it's 6 years of building your audience of doing that. So, you know, the patience is so important, and it is something that builds with time. And if you are consistent, it works. If you stop, it stops. I mean, that's just the natural part of it. So we've got a comment, a couple, I think a couple in, oh yeah, I see.
Yeah. So one thing I want to tell everybody, because it really helps me. I don't know how much you guys invest or how much you understand the stock market, but there's a saying that applies to the stock market that I think applies to social media and self-growth is if you're investing consistently over time in the S&P 500, which is like the group of all of the big businesses, over time, you will go up 7% historically over time, like we're talking decades. So you invest, but you have to invest consistently over time. The stock market will go up, it'll go down. They'll hit all-time lows and all-time highs. Life is the same way, and social media is the same way. Sometimes you might feel that your business is failing. You might feel that your social media is failing, your views are really low or whatever. But what you don't know is your all-time high is just around the corner. And if you keep doing that over years, you're consistently growing. So that really helps me with low periods.
That's a great, yeah, great correlation to that. Yeah, same thing. Good analogy there. Okay, we've got just under 10 minutes left, I think. So any last minute questions here, comments, something you've been really wanting to know about social media? And I'm just going to say, there is no dumb question. I know you hear that all the time, but if something is really, you feel almost too basic for this conversation, it isn't, because this is a topic, yeah, that's just, and it changes, you know, the platforms change, what comes in changes. So again,
yeah, if you guys aren't on TikTok and you're comfortable making videos, get on TikTok. Snapchat actually has a bunch of new public opportunities now too, so that would be a good thing to focus on. And if you have an iPhone and you are good at talking, get on Clubhouse. I know it's a big deal. I can't get on it. I don't have Apple products, but like it's a good idea.
as always, Kim, I think, yeah, we're getting lots of thank you comments in the chat there. Wonderful, such a great topic, and you certainly have a wealth of information. So thank you so much for sharing everything you know, because yeah, it's going. We've got lots and lots of thank you. So thank you so much, Kim, from me, from C, but also from everyone else that joined us today. Hope everyone has a good week.
Thank you, everyone. You guys have been awesome. I hope you have a good time. Check me out on everything at Witte Artistry, or hit me up at witteartistry@gmail.com. Would love to answer your questions or whatever.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.
Bye.